have the Army Corps present during the meeting. They'll be having a slideshow and papers on a wall to go over everything. After a presentation, the questions will come from the board. Then after the board, we'll open it up to the public. When you do speak, make sure you speak into the mic very loud and clear. This meeting is being recorded, so that way whoever could not make this meeting, we could present it out on the flood page and out on the local towns' links on the web pages. So we'll give one to each town, a link, that accesses it, that so that people who cannot make it see it. So when it does come time for that, please hold your questions. Let the Army Corps go through the process, and then we'll have the board ask questions, and we'll open it up to the public. All right. I'd like to welcome everybody to the March meeting of the Raritan Millstone River Flood Control Commission. It's 7:06. Can Ann read the Open Public Meeting Act?
In accordance with Section 5 of the Open Public Meeting Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, be it advised that adequate notice of this meeting of the Raritan and Millstone River Flood Control Commission was made by posting on the bulletin boards in the participating municipalities and transmitted to the officially designated newspapers a list of dates annually, indicating that this meeting would take place at the Franklin Township Municipal Building, 475 DeMont Lane, Somerset, New Jersey, on Wednesday, March 23, 2016, at 7 p.m. In addition, a copy of this notice is and has been available to the public and is on file in the office of the municipal clerk in the Township of Franklin.
Roll call, please.
Bridgewater Township, Franklin Township,
Here.
Hillsborough Township, Manville Borough,
Here.
Millstone Borough,
Here.
Montgomery Township,
Here.
Raritan Borough, Rocky Hill Borough,
Here.
Somerville Borough,
Here.
Southbound Brook Borough, Somerset County.
All right, we have enough quorum. Will everybody please stand, flag salute, and a moment of silence.
Same here for Rocky Hill.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all. Again, we do have our updated webpage. We have been updating, and you're going to do the minutes and add these. The minutes from this meeting will be added to the webpage, and also we'll put the link in for the video. We have our Facebook account out there trying to share people day to day. We have a phone number, 406-356-0365, which is Flood NJ. Our next meeting will be May 25th in Bridgewater Township. In Bridgewater. Okay, Secretary's report. We need a motion to approve minutes for the February 24th meeting. Can I have a motion?
Franklin, I'd like the motion.
I need a second.
Second.
Somerville? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right. Correspondence. There are many correspondence for this meeting. Of course, the Army Corps of Engineers back and forth. Many of the towns. We had Senator Bateman, Assemblyman Chidarelli happens to be here. We communication with them. Congresswoman Bonnie Watson Coleman, representative. I don't know if they're in the audience. Has a representative here? You do?
I'm actually here for Assemblyman Zwicker.
Okay. Okay, Zwicker is here, Assemblyman Zwicker. So we've had communications to all of our representatives, all the way up to Senator Lautenberg and Senator Booker. We have sent information to them too. But that's well, that flashback of my age just showed there. So we have been keeping in track of those. So this meeting, the feedback from this meeting has been asked to send out to all of our state and federal representatives, and also we will keep in track our freeholders, who is our main sponsor for the Flood Commission, so we'll feedback information to them. So those are all the correspondence. Anybody else had any correspondence? And anything more? All right. Treasury report. Kevin.
Sure, we have just one payment we have to make for this 164 in the amount of $600. There's no income this meeting cycle.
Okay. No budget and no donations. All right, need a motion to accept payment of $600 for check 164.
Rocky Hill.
All right, need a second?
Franklin?
Roll call, please.
Franklin?
Yes.
Manville?
Yes.
Millstone?
Yes.
Montgomery? Rocky Hill?
Yes.
Somerville?
Yes.
Somerset County?
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Financial Committee report?
We have the balance of our account, $13,244.07. That's our balance after that authorized payment. The paperwork for the audit's being processed now, and by next meeting, the audit should be complete.
All right, so they're going to present the audit to us, at least, or are they going to be here?
Yep.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, Kevin, for that. So we'll have it's basically a 2-year audit. It goes for the last
Right.
2 years, okay, 2015, 2014, right?
Correct.
Right. Other question I had was, did the $250 bills go to all the towns?
No, not yet.
Not
We're
yet.
gonna, I think a letter was gonna be.
Letter's going to go with it? Okay,
Regarding-
we'll do that after this meeting, fine. And we'll do a separate one for the county for the 250, besides the counts. All right, I need a motion to accept the Finance Committee report for March.
Rocky Hill.
Rocky Hill, I need a second?
Millstone.
Millstone? Roll call, please.
Franklin?
Yes.
Manville?
Yes.
Millstone?
Yes.
Montgomery?
Yes.
Rocky Hill?
Yes.
Somerville?
Yep.
Somerset County?
Okay, Finance Committee, we just had that. Kevin, Legislative Committee report. Dan, who could not make it, his mother is ill, and he could not make this meeting, but most of the legislative conversation has been coming back and forth dealing with the Army Corps flood report. Everybody is, it's kind of fallen off the radar, the most of the people, and everybody is very interested in getting the detailed information. After this meeting, I guess I'm going to ask the Army Corps, can you send me a link that I can send to all of our representatives instead of us trying to send out all this information again? Just a link so our senators and Congress and Assembly can go to this link and say they can get the reports and everything. Yes. Okay, great. Thank you. Engineer Committee, after this presentation, we'll have a meeting with all the town engineers. So when we have the full report back, we'll have a meeting and go over it. We have approximately, 4 or 5 engineers on this commission, so hopefully we can go over it and get more details out of it, and maybe give a summary at the next meeting. Public Relations, Communications, Steve and Allison.
Well, our effort this month was obviously to try to publicize this meeting. I'm gratified to see so many people in attendance. And we're looking for our next challenge, which is probably the exciting about publicizing the result of this meeting.
Right, exactly. Summarizing it and getting to information. And also, tying into that, at our last meeting, we had concerns from the freeholders, where are we going? Where's the Flood Commission now going? So we created a little survey, goals and project survey, basically. If you all could take one and fill it out and send it back, and even in the audience, we have them here, just put the town yard, and it says, are you a member, yes or no? There's like 8 of them, and there's actually write-ins. So basically, we have different projects that we think we can do. There's only a minimal amount of budget we have, but we can go for grants and stuff. So these are 8 of them that we put together that we thought we can go and out and do. Please, before you leave, just do the survey. Even if you don't want to put your name on it, just put your town on it and say you're not a member and say the direction you think we are going to go. And also, we could send these out to all the towns again, and Anne Marie will send this out and try to see where the town thinks we should be going. Public Relations, presentation, special guest. All right. With great anticipation, I'm gladly to present the Army Corps of Engineers. I'll let Robert, you could probably introduce everybody on the panel, and you'll like it. Once again, we'll let the Army Corps do their presentation, At the end of it, we'll let the board ask the questions, and then we'll open up for questions after that. Go ahead, Robert.
Okay, my name is Robert Greco. I'm the project manager on this project. I've been a project manager since 2011 on the Millstone River Basin project. I'm going to introduce the team that is with me today. I have Alec Peterson here to my right. He's the planner who will be presenting the slide deck on the overhead today. I have Mr. Ray Shembri from our engineering division, and I have Tom Slowinski. He's the non-federal sponsor for this project from New Jersey DEP. Okay, as Frank stated, if you could please wait till the end of our presentation, and then we'll take any questions that you may have. Any questions that we can't answer at this moment, I would suggest that we make a note of it, and it's all the questions are then sent over to us, and then we'll answer them and then reply over to the RMR FCC, so it's orderly. Okay, so Alec, if
Sure, Bob.
you would like to take over the presentation now.
Okay, thank you, Bob. All right, so we're going to go through this presentation, which should give an overview of the feasibility study that we've been conducting for the Millstone River Basin. So we have released the draft report to the public for review. We released it on the 17th last week, and it's on our website, and we will provide you the link for reviewing it. All right, so this is the Millstone River Basin. This is a flood risk management feasibility study. NJDEP is the non-federal sponsor on this study. Cost shared 50-50. All right, so just to give you an overview, we'll start out with a little bit about the study background and history and the problems related to flooding that the Millstone River Basin has been experiencing. We will discuss the study and project area. That says problem, it should be project. And the screening of the basin, how we narrowed in on Manville as a test. We'll go over the normal formulation process that takes place in a feasibility study. Then we'll discuss measures to deal with the issue of flooding and how we screen those measures and came up with a number of alternatives to address the problem. We'll get to our study results, then discuss next steps, and we have contact information. The contact information may have the link to the report. So, all right. So to give you a little bit of background, this study is being conducted under the USACE General Investigations Program. It was authorized in 1999 by the U.S. House of Representatives. In 2000, we had completed a reconnaissance report recommending a feasibility study to examine flood risk management alternatives within the basin. Typically, in the past, we've done recon studies, and the purpose of that was to take a quick, more qualitative look and determine whether the problem warranted a more detailed, in-depth feasibility study, and that report did. So, as a result, in 2002, we signed a FIXA, or Feasibility Study Cost Share Agreement, with NJDEP as the non-federal sponsor. The study is cost shared 50-50. The problem to be solved in the study area is fluvial flooding or riverine flooding. It occurs as a result of storm events within the basin. And as a result of the problem, we had an opportunity in this study to develop these alternatives, study them, analyze them, and determine if we could implement something. This is the study area. Now on this map, you're probably not going to see this very well. So you could look toward that way, and we have the larger maps on the wall that show the basin after the presentation. All right. Now, in going through the basin, there's a number of different communities in it. So it was a large area. So in order to focus our efforts, we looked at the floodplains on those maps that we just went over, and we came up with some rough structure counts per municipality that are within the 100-year floodplain for each municipality. the map numbers tell you where they are, and you'll have an opportunity after to look at the maps. We also have an FIP, or the National Flood Insurance Program claims per municipality on the slide. As you can see, Manville had about 20 million approximately. Then the next two municipalities were Millstone Borough and Franklin Township. So this is part of our screening. All right. And we selected Manville as a test for detailed consideration, as it was the highest impact municipality within the basin due to the number of flood claims, the number of structures, and their density. That was again within the 1% annual chance exceedance floodplain, which is equivalent to the 100-year floodplain. Typically, a 1% storm is a storm that has a 1 in 100% chance of occurring per year, a 1 in 100 chance. In other municipalities, the floodplain tends to be narrow along the Millstone and its tributaries and relatively less urbanized, and they tend to be less dense and more widely distributed. So we concluded this way that if an economically viable alternative to address these flooding problems within Manville couldn't be identified, it was unlikely that an economically justified alternative could be found in one of the other municipalities within the basin. And in that case, we would make a recommendation of no further federal action with regard to this cost-shared study. And we went over the flood claims already. All right, so we narrowed down the study area to the project area. The project area was Manville. Here you could see the borough. On the blue ribbon on top, looking thing on top, is the Raritan River. Coming up from the bottom is the Millstone. You could see that they meet. That's the confluence near the Indian Farm Weir Dam by the New Jersey American Water Plant toward the right, and then the lower Raritan continues going off the screen. All right. Now, the borough, as a result of the Raritan River and the Millstone River, Manville is surrounded by these floodwaters. The cause is fluvial flooding from the Millstone River and the Raritan, and also due to backwater flooding from the Raritan River during storm events. Basically, it backs up at the confluence and overflows as well. And most of the areas within Manville that are near one of these water bodies or a tributary have some level of flooding problems. We had an economic analysis of the 0.2% annual chance exceedance floodplain in the borough of Manville, and we came up with an annualized damage pool of approximately $2.85 million. Now that figure is an average annual damage that you might expect to see per year. It might happen one year, it might not happen another, it varies. That's an average figure. Now the 0.2% chance floodplain is the 500-year floodplain. And that would be the floodplain that would fill with water due to a storm that would have a 1 in 500 chance of occurring per year. Now, there are about 490 structures within the 100-year floodplain, or 1% annual chance exceedance floodplain in Manville. You're probably aware that the Lost Valley section is one of the most densely populated portions, and it tends to experience a fairly large proportion of the damages within Manville. And there's about 250 residential structures within the 100-year floodplain in the Lost Valley. It's not up on the screen, but when we did our structure inventory of the 500-year floodplain, I believe there were almost 1,500 structures we included in our damage pool. Now, there's a number of storms over the years that have caused damage. They're listed briefly in the report, which we'll provide a link to. We just called out some here. mostly Floyd and Doria, Floyd and Irene. Floyd and Irene damaged or affected about 1,200 homes within Manville. Major structural damage occurred to about 75 homes. Floyd was a 500-year event, and with, again, as usual, the Lost Valley District was one of the hardest hit areas with over 500 homes damaged. And we found that Floyd caused about $16 million worth of damage. Tropical Storm Irene also caused severe damages in 2011. And again, particularly it hit the Lost Valley section. I know that there was also an event in April of 2007 that caused damage. And Sandy, did not affect these areas as much because it was more of a tidal event with little rainfall, relatively little rainfall. All right. These are some caveats to our study, to how we go about our formulation process with respect to flood risk management. No project eliminates the risk of flooding. It would just simply reduce the likelihood and severity of flooding over time. And during a project lifetime, which is often tends to be about 50 years, at least in terms of our analysis, most projects experience an event that's larger than what they were designed for. And that kind of ties us in with the second bullet. And physical features such as alternatives we're going to discuss are only one aspect of flood risk management. All right. And typically we collaborate with other agencies, and there's different routes people can go for help. Oh. All right. So this is our formulation process. Typically it's a six-step process. First we go out, we specify the problem and opportunity, which we've discussed. Now our projects need a baseline with which we can compare the alternatives we develop against. And that baseline would be existing conditions. We look at the existing conditions currently and future without project conditions, typically out to about 50 years. Once we've done that, we would formulate a number of alternatives. In order to do that, we would examine a number of flood risk management measures. That could be, and we'll get to that, some will be structural, non-structural. We would screen those measures to determine whether they're feasible. Are they feasible from an engineering point of view, an environmental point of view? And measures that survive that screening would be developed into alternatives. And we would analyze those alternatives, and we'll get to that later. That's where we get to evaluating the alternatives. We look at plans for completeness. Do they really help the problem in a large amount of the area? Are they effective? Are they efficient? Benefit to cost? Are they acceptable to the community and to other local stakeholders and interest groups? And we would compare the reduced damages of proposed alternatives, which is against the without project conditions to determine the benefits. So damages reduced are benefits. And we will get a little into that later. We would have to develop costs for the proposed alternatives to compare to the benefits, since we evaluate everything economically to determine whether it's cost effective. And for a project to be cost effective, it has to have a BCR, or benefit cost ratio, greater than 1. For every dollar that we spend developing an alternative or implementing it, does it give more back in terms of damages reduced or benefits? And at that point, if warranted and we have a feasible alternative that's economically justified, we would hopefully select that plan for recommendation. So in determining an economically justified plan, we develop a number of alternatives, compare them against each other, And the alternative that maximizes net benefits relative to other alternatives is identified as a tentatively selected plan, or TSP. Now, net benefits is not the same thing as a BCR. It's the benefit minus the cost. So you're not comparing plans based on BCR. BCR is just simply an initial test. Does each individual plan give back more than it costs? So when we compare it, it's net benefits. Once we have a TSP, we would typically optimize and select that plan. Optimization means you would look at different levels of the plan, come up with costs and benefits for each level, and pick the plan that has the greatest net benefits. I mean, you already have the plan you've selected. You're just looking at different levels of that plan. All right? And that becomes the NED plan once you optimize it, and hopefully you can recommend that plan. And if all alternatives have a BCR less than 1, we would typically recommend no further federal action with respect to this study. And if during construction, we would cost share the project with a non-federal sponsor. Flood risk management projects are typically cost shared 65% federal, 35% non-federal. And these are some of the initial measures we considered. We always have no action as a baseline if a plan isn't warranted or feasible. That also serves as the baseline, as discussed previously, to measure other alternatives, and that may become more clear when we get to a table at the end. And that action is also required under NEPA or the National Environmental Protection Act. When we present alternatives to NJDEP, different groups within NJDEP, they want to know that we look at different alternatives, mitigate for, any environmental issues that we have. So we always have to have that as a backup. Now you have two general types of measures. You have structural and non-structural. Structural solutions are larger scale plans. It could be anything from a levee flood wall to a detention basin. And those typically protect an area with quite a number of homes. Non-structural typically applies to structure by structure, or a small cluster of structures if you're talking about a ring wall around them. And you could raise the structure or elevate it. You could wet or dry floodproof it, or buy it out. And for structural, we have two plans we developed: a levee flood wall plan and a channel modification plan. In looking at diversions, we did not identify a hydraulically suitable location that would be possible to put, say, a diversion culvert to divert water from one place to another. We looked at detention basins, and there just simply wasn't really an area where we would have enough storage to move forward with analyzing that. So we've actually moved forward with levees and flood walls, channel modifications, and the non-structural plans in our analysis to develop our alternatives. And just to give you a quick idea of what some typical non-structural measures look like, and you may already be familiar with this, with the Blue Acres program, buying out a number of homes in the Lost Valley District. In the top left, you have a structure elevation or raising. You have two types of floodproofing. With a wet floodproofing, you're still getting the water in, but, critical appliances, et cetera, would be raised so as not to get wet. With dry floodproofing, the inside of the structure typically tends to be dry and doesn't get wet. All right, so in screening, we came up with these plans. The first two are the structural plans, the levee flood wall plan. Number 2 is the channel modification. Plans 3 and 4 each had 4 sub-plans to them. With Plan 3, we looked at the 2% annual chance exceedance floodplain, which is the 50-year plan, and the 10-year plan for number 4A through 4D, simply to look at different levels. And let me see. That's just a list. All right. This is our structural alternative number 1. We had some different levee systems, and we don't have, I'm not going to read this probably verbatim. Our two structural plans, we looked at the 50-year level, or 2% level of flood risk management. That consisted of different levee systems, and there's so many miles, et cetera, of levees, flood walls, et cetera, for each. And the next one should. All right, so this is the Manville area. Up top, you have the Raritan coming toward the right of the screen, if you could see it. On the bottom, you have the Millstone coming up to the confluence with the Raritan flowing out of the screen on the right. The top levee section was the north section toward the top left to protect some homes from the Raritan River. The middle levee section was to protect the Lost Valley District. That was the central plan and part of the southern plan. The little levee you see alone was a levee for Zara Path. All right, our second alternative was a channel plan. With channel modifications, you're typically altering the cross-section of a stream or river to enlarge it so you can pass more water through so it doesn't overtop to the degree it normally would. And there's different sections of that, although it's one continuous channel plan that begins on the upper part of the Raritan, upstream of the confluence of the Raritan and Millstone, and then flows downstream. And that, again, like the other structural plan, is for the 50-year. All right. Now, you may not be able to see this as well with the lights on. And again, those plans are over there on the wall afterward, Plan 2, the channel plan. So you have the Raritan coming in from the left. From the bottom left, you have the Millstone, you have the confluence there. The channel plan. Robert. Okay. Thank you. What is this? All right, thank you. All right, so you have the Millstone coming in right here. You have the Raritan coming in here. Yes, it's working. Yeah, it's a little dim. The channel plan starts right here, moves down to the confluence, continues along the Raritan up to about this point where it narrows and finishes. It's dim.
Yeah, okay, must have done.
Basically, the channel plan is the green portion along the river. But we'd have a chance to look at it on the slides afterward. All right. This is Plan 3. This was the first non-structural plan. We looked at the 50-year floodplain. Initially, we came up with a plan within this that included all structures within the 50-year 2% annual chance exceedance floodplain. In coordination with NJDEP, our non-federal sponsor, and local stakeholders such as the RMRFCC here, we were asked to analyze some subsets of this plan, and we did this. Those are 3B, 3C, and 3D. Those are all the 50-year, except for 3B, we excluded structures that were being bought out under the Blue Acres program, and those are the 104 structures in the process right now, a number of which have already been removed. For 3C, we excluded the Blue Acres program structures and anything within the Zarapath area on the other side of the Delaware Canal and the Millstone River. And for 3D, we excluded the Blue Acres structures and structures within the Lost Valley area. Now that's the 2% floodplain. And to give you an idea, again, you have the Raritan on top, the Millstone on the bottom. You can see the confluence toward the right. And this will be evident afterwards looking at the posters again. The structures along the Millstone, that's the Lost Valley District, and then there's some structures up along the Raritan. And this is the map for 3A because it has all the structures. There's other maps for, not on this presentation, that have 3B, 3C, and 3D. Again, and this is somewhat of a rehash except for the 10-year floodplain. So it's the same thing with 4A, 4B, 4C, and 4D. Now, one thing to mention, in terms of the non-structural plan, even though 3 and 4 looked at the 50-year and 10-year floodplains respectively, structures that would be treated, whether it's with elevation or other methods, we would treat those structures so that to provide flood risk management to the 100-year level or the 1% storm plus 1 foot. So that 10% and the 50% in the previous slides is the actual floodplain we're looking at. Structures within those floodplains would be treated to the 100-year plus 1. And this is the 10-year floodplain. You could see that there's less structures because the floodplain is smaller. It's not as great an event. It tends to be more common, but the severity is less. And in terms of analyzing all our alternatives, some of you, I don't know how well you could see this. The first two are the structural plans, levee flood wall, and then channel modification. And then you have the 4 plans for 3 and the 4 plans for 4. The first column is the without project flood damages, and that's an annualized figure. That was the 2.5 million mentioned. 2.85. Sorry, Bob. With project, you would see residual damages. You could see that those figures are lower. For instance, with the levee flood wall plan in place, it's 1.28 million approximately, and we can show this slide to you later, if you want to look at individual figures. So if you subtract those residual damages in column 2 from the damage pool in column 1, you get the third column, which is annualized benefits. Then we develop costs for each of the alternatives, and those are first costs. Those are not annualized. We come up with a total investment cost after that, and that includes things like interest during construction. For instance, what could the money have done if it had been used for something else? The same thing as a bank. So that total investment cost is annualized to a figure that you see in the third column from the left. And those columns allow us to calculate the last 2 columns, which are the results we're looking for, which are net excess benefit or net benefits and the BCRs. All plans we analyzed had BCRs below 1. I believe the highest was 0.49, which was Plan 4C. So none of the plans were economically justified. And we know you have experienced recurrent flooding. However, due to cost-benefit analysis, we were unable to identify an economically justified solution. And this is due to the relatively small damage pool within Manville. So we've concluded through our economic analysis that all these formulated plans have cost-benefit ratios less than unity or 1. And no alternative plan has been identified to move forward and recommend with. So that is our conclusion. I know you're probably not happy to hear this, but we're bound by the rules that we have to follow in our analysis. So we'd be finishing this feasibility study. We would produce a report with all the appendices with the supporting technical documentation. You can see some milestones on the left. When we have a draft report, which is what has been released to the public online, we have a public review period. It's typically 30 days. Sometimes it's 45. This is 30. It depends whether the accompanying document is an environmental assessment or an environmental or an EIS. However, we didn't get to that step. So this is a 30-day public review period. That would end about mid-April. And we would take comments from the public, either written or emailed, that you can submit to us. And as we revise our draft report, we would look at those and incorporate them accordingly. We also include any comments from our non-federal sponsor, NJDEP, and our own team internally. This report would be approved by the North Atlantic Division, which is the next level up, for reports that have no recommendation, that have a recommendation of no action. They have approval of authority, so they review this report. We would take all these comments and incorporate them when justified and produce a final report, which we anticipate would be approved and signed by the general or the colonel in June of 2016. And we have study contacts. Robert Greco is the project manager or PM. His number and email are there. My contact information as the project planner is below. NJDEP study contacts are toward the top right. Now the link to the web page for the report is on the bottom right. If you access that link, you can scroll down to the bottom right of the internet screen, and that will take you to the posted report. I found one mistake in the report on a table that we just have to correct, so we might briefly take it off and immediately put it back up. And we sent the RMR FCC an email with the links, so they can provide that to you as well. And I believe that concludes the actual presentation, so I believe we would take questions from the audience.
We'll do the council.
Or the
Board
council?
first. Yes, we'll do
Okay.
the board. All right, we'll let the people on the board ask some questions first. I got a couple real easy ones. I said, I think they're easy. First off, when you did the value cost comparison to value, the value of the homes, what year did you use as your value year?
Let me see. It was a recent year. We may have updated.
I was estimating 2013, 2014.
It was at least that. We may have updated it to
14.
further levels. Let me look at the table.
So you use basically the value of the homes on the year 2014. Just for comparison, when the project started, those homes before the repetitive floodings, the average home in Manville was about $230,000. I mean, it was 2,000, 30,000, 2014 round, right around 2014. So that's about when we got your first draft. So I figured those were the numbers. An average home in Manville was 220,000. In 2005, which I figured that was the beginning, 2002, 2005, before Irene, before Floyd, before the repetitive storms, the homes in Manville were valued at $318,000. That's about $100,000 difference. So so if you multiply it out by 300 homes, you're looking around $30 million difference in value. I know. I know when Sandy money came and they started giving the buyouts, they gave the value of the homes prior to the storm. So I was wondering, why did you use local date, time, values, and not at the beginning of the storm, before the storm hit? Because, of course, we know the storm has decreased the value of the homes, which basically, repetitive is the reason why we're doing this. So we're using numbers after the storm. I was wondering why, hindsight, why didn't we use like 2005, 2006, which was prior to the storms?
What we do in order to develop our damage pool, we go out and we do a structure inventory. We look at the ground elevations, first floor elevations, low opening. We put it into a model, and we use depreciated structure cost. It's not the cost of the parcel or the land. We look at the value of the structure that we estimate it to be. We depreciate it depending on its condition, and that gets plugged into the damage pool.
So it's not
So-
the total cost of the,
It's not
it's not the market value.
Right.
No,
So-
it's
so
not.
my question is, so you have homes that have been hit repetitively damage, and if the study was done quicker, the value of the homes would be worth more, which cost benefit ratio. So we waited to the end. You went into each home, said this home has damage, so it's really not worth 220. It's only worth 200,000.
We use actually a guide. There's a book with square foot costs for different types of homes. I guess that was the 2014 level.
Okay.
That gets multiplied by the square foot, and we do various calculations to come up with the depreciated cost. If we were to update it to, say, 2016 or pre-Sandy, I don't believe it would change our results.
Well, yeah, because it's not market value, it's
It's
the
not
cost to
market
repair
value.
the structure.
Right.
Okay, so it's the cost to repair the structure.
So it's not the value, the value is not the value of the home, it's the value of the repair?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
It's what we estimate the value of the structure to
Yeah,
be,
because
not
you have
market
to-
value.
You have to repair the structure. That's
Yes.
not the market value.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, and we looked at this over a 50-year level, a 50-year period of analysis, so we put that into it as well.
Now, the cost, you compare cost, the value, what is the value of the residence, and you use the cost, how much it will cost to fix it, say to tear it down or elevate it. Where do you get those numbers from? Because the one thing, when your preliminary numbers came out, they seemed very high, but you said it was a national average?
And you're speaking about the non-structural plans?
Right, yeah, the elevation, or even the putting up the levee or widening the river. So where do you get the value? Because you even broke down when you were talking about the levee and the dredging, you even put it down per mile, this would cost about approximately.
It depends whether you're talking a structural or a non-structural solution. With a structural solution, such as a channel or levee flood wall, we come up with the cost based on quantities and amount of material and the other associated costs. Now, for non-structural, which I think is where you're going, I don't remember where we estimated the cost at. We could find that out and get back to you.
Just for comparison, that your costs, if they haven't changed from the last year and a half, were quite higher than the actual cost, what is happening now. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yes.
And that's what
This
they're,
is the market value you're talking
yeah,
about.
but I'm just saying, the cost.
The cost to
that
repair
sand-
we
Right.
had as a higher cost, you're saying, than
Than the Sandy,
than
the
the
Blue Acres.
than the actual market value.
Right, yeah.
Well,
so-
but that could happen. You could have a cost that to build depends on where you build a house, right?
But I'm saying the cost that they're tearing the homes down right now in the town, your costs are more money than what's physically is really happening.
Okay, but, all right, so we'll have to get back.
We can get those,
Okay.
I'm just saying, can you guys go back and work with, basically, it's the Blue Acre funds that were used from, well, they call it
Blue
Sandy
Acres,
funds,
yeah.
right, yeah. So it seems like their numbers were more, lower costs per house demolishing than yours.
But
Now,
they were purchasing the homes, right?
they were
correct.
purchasing and
So
destroying them.
that's market value. We're not talking market value. We're talking taking the house down or elevating it. We're
Right.
talking about the cost of construction could be more than market value.
Right. Well, they're using, they're tearing the homes down. They're buying it and tearing them down. It just, your
We would
numbers,
have to rebuild them or elevate them.
we're not saying rebuild. We're saying, part of your plan was to actually demolish homes and not to put nothing in that site. Some of them were elevated, some of them were.
Right, some were buyouts.
Right, so it just seemed like the 100, I know it's less homes. It's only 104, 108 compared to your 300 total. So I know there's less, so it
Well,
just
we
seemed.
can, if you send us a comment?
Yeah,
do it.
well,
check
we'll do it.
No
I just
problem.
want you to basically work with with the people who are currently doing it in the town and make sure your numbers jive with their numbers, because they're real numbers. This is how much it's costing, not on paper, in real life, to tear homes down. So I want to make sure that your feasibility study numbers fall within their actual numbers.
Okay, we can do that. We'll
Okay.
talk with our cost estimating and
Okay.
engineering.
Blue Acres, of course, he's talking about the Blue Acres.
The
Yes.
Blue
So
Acre
we can
Sandy
think.
Fund, right.
I have this from Courtney, who's actually the
Right.
management coordinator, that the average closure buyout purchase price is between $195,000 to $200,000. However, with the per property costs are average, or about almost $300,000, because you have to include the acquisition soft costs, including the tech work and demolition, which is a big.
So your cost is around $300,000 per home.
300,000, yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's what I have here, right.
Right.
I have here, our benefit cost analysis, this is what I was given by DEP, the Blue Acres, is, per property is approximately $297,893, which includes acquisition soft costs, included tech work and demo costs. Okay, it says
So
here, the
about-
average purchase price on what has closed is around $195,000 to $200,000, but that's market value, right? I
So,
mean,
so
they're
so
gonna
the
have
total cost for them to do was 300,000.
300,000.
And I just was trying to figure out what was the total cost in your report?
We
to
can-
do
we
the-
can
We can look
cross-reference.
cross-reference? Thank you, that's all I was trying to do. Excellent,
It's an average, yeah.
okay.
And as part of our report
I
in
thought we had
appendices,
done that, actually, but we can double check that. 'cause
Yes.
We had some numbers.
we have a cost appendix as part of the appendices in the link following the main report, so that might have some of those figures in it.
Okay, total, okay, also, I know you said there was no fifth option, because there was no feasible plan that came along. Do you ever work with another branch, like FEMA, DEP, to merge in some of their grant programs, and you feed off those grant programs? Say FEMA has a elevation 30,000 grant program. Do you ever work with FEMA's grant programs that you throw another 30,000 in that would elevate the homes to 60,000?
No,
You've never worked together, other branches?
No, we don't do that.
no.
It's separate.
Well, it just, you said there's no other feasible program out there,
Well, there's FEMA program,
right?
no other feasible program on the core side,
Right,
but there are other feasible federal programs.
right. So I was just wondering
Correct.
if the federal government actually worked with the federal government. It's just,
No, the different agencies, no,
Different
it's different agencies have different programs, so you have the programs from FEMA, you have the Blue Acres programs, right,
Right.
from the state.
yeah, I was just,
The state.
I just thought, this has a program funding, they have program funding. and
Do
you
we
got
combine and pool money?
Combine
No.
the food,
No, we don't
No.
do that. No, we don't.
They do coordinate on a higher level. The Washington level flood insurance program and our levy programs, we coordinate on how we treat common things that overlap.
okay. Well, after this meeting, I'm gonna take our minutes, and I'm gonna send it to our federal representative and say, hey, what's the jive at the Washington level? Okay. The last two questions are easy. What is the total cost? Was it 8 million is the final total cost of the study?
Of the study, no, I have that. In 2002, 1 second, Frank. The total project cost of the study in March of 2002 was set at 6.8 million.
6.8 million, and how much money did you spend of that?
Okay, to date, we've spent 3,101,870.
101. And was there any money remaining after, remember we were raising money, the flood commission worked with the, congressmen and senators to raise money. Was there any money left over in the pool that we finished work on?
Well, we received 3.5 million.
So
Okay,
400,000.
so we have right now we have approximately 421K remaining.
21K. Simple
Roughly.
question,
Okay.
what happens to that money?
We would, I believe we would return that to the DEP.
Or it gets reprogrammed.
Yes.
In other words, to another project.
So
We would coordinate with,
even though we were the ones that were fighting for this program, the money was raised, it will just go to another program.
It could,
It
yes.
could.
it could.
Or they can take the money back and use it on a national basis. On the federal side, New Jersey DEP, they can, use it for other flood control works.
Okay. Now, it's not like court. You do once you go to trial, you can never do it again. So this was done in a small 2.5 square mile acreage area. Has there ever been a program saying, well, it didn't work for 2.5 square miles. I know you guys said, we don't want to go big, let's start small and see if it works, because it's the worst hit. When you look at Greenbrook's, the main thing that brought Greenbrook feasibility up, it hit homes that were well off. The average home in Manville is not $1 million home, and you don't have any industry sitting on a main highway. If you look at the Greenbrook project, you had both of those. You had a major highway.
You had a lot of business,
And you had a lot of businesses, and you had a lot of
a lot of impacted business.
homes that were higher up that were quite valuable. Maybe hindsight, we went too small, and what would be the steps to say, wait a minute, we went, logically it made sense. Let's do it small first, where the hardest hit, instead of doing broad.
That's that table that you were looking at before, Alan. with
Yes,
the
that was
damages.
the
We're
NFIP
looking at
claims and
that
the
here.
structure counts.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you were to expand, say, a levee or a flood wall to another area that was relatively less dense and where structures were more spread out with a narrow floodplain, you would be increasing the cost at a significantly
Benefits
greater
are-
rate than the benefits.
I guess what I'm trying to say is, can the encompassing, the water that hits that confluence doesn't rain in Manville. It rains all the way up in Highbridge, it rains all the way down in Princeton. So the impact area of the flooding is not Manville. The impact area is the the Millstone Basin.
Yes.
So shouldn't the calculation of the value saving be across that area?
We looked at Manville because
I
it
know.
was, it had the greatest likelihood of being economically
But
justified.
I'm saying it's not only going to save Manville money. When Manville floods and it has to be repaired, the whole county gets charged tax money to repair that, to clean up the mess and everything. So it's not impacting Manville only. I'm saying the actual value is larger. For example, if the American Water got flooded, we were told by them it would be millions of dollars in damage. So that was not part of your study, and it was only yards away from the study.
We actually included the Somerset sewage plant
Right.
and the New Jersey American Water plant in our damage pool.
So they came to us and said to have their wall elevated, if they didn't do it, there'd be millions of dollars in damage. So right off the bat, your calculations is blown away there because they're saying one thing, you're saying another. So I'm just saying the broad base, you're right, would be just the homes in Manville, but it spans a larger area, more than your 2.5 square miles.
You know, are you talking the whole basin or just some areas surrounding Manville?
Basically, the majority of the basin that feeds into it, but you're impacting, what hits Manville is impacting the whole basin. So I was trying to say that the cost ratio should have been, it's cost this much to do this, but what you're impacting is a larger area. I'm actually doing semantics here. I'm saying you only put a little tiny area, because that's where the wall is or the river is, but it's actually impacting a lot higher up the river. So that's the other, I'm trying to find another way to say that I think the study should have been broader base instead of little, because I know how you said it, let's only go over to the one that's the $20 million impact. But it's only a $20 million impact on a small amount of homes, when it really is a $20 million impact that impacts the whole basin.
That kind of goes back to the benefit versus cost.
Right.
You might increase the benefits at a lower rate, but the cost could increase at an even greater rate. Because you would have to have, say, however many thousands of feet of levee flood wall or miles to protect a lower number of structures. So it would not increase the likelihood of an alternative being cost justified.
Well, I'll write up, the main one I was going to give an example was the widening of the river. You wouldn't change it all. You'd save exactly where it was, South Bombrook to Manville to Somerville, and you're saving flooding, not only in that 2.5 square mile area, you're saving it all the way up to Branchburg, all the way down to Rocky Hill.
We looked at the widening of the channelization.
Right,
I'm going to tell you right now, based on other projects that I have in
Yeah.
the state of New Jersey DEP LURP, Land Use Regulatory Program, is not amenable to channelization within the streams. They absolutely, nope.
So the main point I'm trying to, I guess I'm
This is
not.
other projects that I
Yeah,
have.
so the main point I'm trying to make is that even though you improved only the little area,
Right.
it's actually saving flooding a lot larger in the area. So I'm not saying you do more work, I'm just saying it's saving areas farther up the river.
I see what you're saying.
Right, so
Without extending.
without
the plan.
extending the expenditures. You're actually,
That's-
without spending a dime more on doing the levee or doing anything, you're actually impacting more than Manville. So the more than Manville should have been part of the cost-benefit ratio.
The structural inventory, I believe, was slightly less than 1,500 structures within the 500-year floodplain.
That's further upstream too.
That's the Manville and some very close adjacent areas.
So I'm
Surrounding
saying
it.
farther up Hillsborough, farther into Millstone, which we have another dozen structures, farther up into Rocky Hill, Hillsborough, you do repair in Manville, same cost, it's going to impact all the way up the river. So you actually have more structures that would cost benefit ratio.
We can take a look at how much, this would be just for the channel.
Yes,
Because
channel,
the levees
it's-
obviously are not helping people
No.
upstream if they're not around them.
If not around, right, exactly.
So the channel work kind of peters out as you get further upstream. I can go take a look and see
Yeah,
what the numbers
yes.
are.
But-
Usually as you start hitting bridges, you start losing all that impact of having a channel downstream.
Okay, that was just,
And you're not going to be end up
right.
picking up.
So I'm trying to find ways to use more structures, which brings the cost benefit ratio up, very much like the Greenbrook project did.
And then for non-structural, that wouldn't work either because it's each, so it would only be on the channel plan.
Absolutely.
And we can take a look at that.
Okay, thank you.
Does
All
the
right,
town
So
use-
that would be a good comment
Yes.
to submit.
Make sure you write that down.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
The channelization only, the degree in change would only be about 1% upstream though, wasn't it?
Are you talking about the when you
Yeah, I mean, I understand what Frank's saying is, Somerville has one house that floods.
Right.
To include that one property in your study would increase the value without,
Yeah, what you're saying is there would be an increase in,
flood. I mean, you'd have.
there would be an increase in cost for construction just to protect that additional structure, and the BC ratio would the cost would greatly escalate.
But we're saying there would be no more costs. We're saying if you allow the water to flow through Manville, through Bombrook, through South Bombrook, and get to New Brunswick quicker, you're not only impacting Manville, you're impacting Millstone.
But this is the channelization project.
Right, yeah, so this is just an example that I'm trying to say is,
Okay,
Your
but
impact-
you realize, I just want to go back, the
Yeah, I know.
channelization on the New Jersey DEP LURP regulation, and Tom could
well,
probably
we
tell you.
happen to have New Jersey DEP.
Exactly. It's not, they don't look favorably to that, and they absolutely don't want you to touch that channel.
But if you say it saves
I know, because
300
I'm working with
people's
other
lives,
projects right now
if you-
where I have
if you
that
put-
similar issue.
You say, okay, I'm going to save 300 people's homes and their lives, basically, or make the river a little bit muddier, wider. I think even the DEP could see that there's a benefit to the person's life over the widening of the river.
What was the BCR on the channelization?
The BCR on the channel plan was
.2.
.2,
Right.
so
Two.
Yeah.
.2,
It's,
And we have to reach one.
yes.
you wouldn't get
Okay,
it.
well, yeah, I mean, it's.
I can
it's
tell you
not
how
impossible.
much
You
it
can't, yeah.
decreases upstream, but
Right.
You're not gonna get there.
Unless it impacts the Bridgewater Commons Mall, and then your numbers are right there. All right, so let other people go, sorry.
Can I piggyback on Frank's comment, though, about affecting upstream? Because Millstone's cost per structure in terms of the table that you had was actually greater than Manville's cost per structure. So if you go 2 miles upstream on the Millstone, save the handful of Millstone houses somehow, I mean, you've just expanded, a good base right there. That's something to consider.
Because they are doing homes in Millstone right now.
Yeah, I mean,
So these-
there was a
the-
FEMA grant for
Right.
elevation and relocating 2 of the structures out of the floodplain, but there's still others. And now we're battling the historic aspect of it too, which, whole other beast, but, it's critical to look into that because it was like, I calculated even at 30 structures in Millstone, for the 1.8 million, it was about 60,000 per structure. For Manville, it was about 40,000. So there's a big difference in such a very tiny, small spot.
We can take a look and see what's upstream,
Okay.
to see what benefits might be incurred without extending the
Yeah.
Same
channel
way, going
plan.
into Hillsborough, there are homes on Dukes Parkway now that were not part of your plan that are actually being rebuilt. Actually, one home got wiped out and totally rebuilt. A couple other homes have been elevated. So within a short distance of your original plan, there are actually homes being elevated, destroyed, rebuilt, both directions. So I'm saying the value of those homes are quite distant because you're leaving Manville, which are a very smaller Cape Cod ranches. You're jumping into historical homes. You're jumping into large colonial homes. So the value, once again, goes up. Are we going to meet we were at basically 0.5. Are we going to get another 0.5? It all depends on the size and what are we hitting. Do we hit, we hit a mansion at Duke's Estate? That might take a chunk of it up. So I'm just saying, we may have cut the line just at the point of too short. And that's all I'm asking is that as of what's been happening in Manville, in Millstone, in Hillsborough, we should really take a look at what is happening for real life instead of on computers.
All right.
The market, just so I understand, the marketability, historic status, none of that plays a role in any of this, right?
No.
Here's my question, am I right, Frank?
Yeah, go ahead.
On the BCR, other than the property and construction value, is there any social economic value placed in those numbers?
We do have a category, other social effects, but it often tends to be minimal, say like transportation delays that we can sometimes look at. We didn't do that for this study, but it would not alter the results.
Okay. Because, I mean, looking at that point two on the channelization, you could probably take the entire town of Manville, and you wouldn't reach that number, right? I mean, I don't know the numbers, I'm just looking at the percentage. What was the BCR on the levy?
The levy BCR was 0.39 levy flood wall.
Yeah, the numbers came, that's what I'm trying to say. It almost seemed like you could take an whole town of Manville, and it would have never made 0.1 for any of the studies.
I agree.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. The scope they went after, it was a lose at the very beginning. It's almost at the, $6 million mark. You should have said, well, I could take all these homes. It's never going to add up to these things. And for social events, just for example, when Sandy came, every person in the valley almost went and got a rent-a-van, took it up to an area, so that's extreme cost. That's never calculated in your calculations, that every time it floods, these people have to go through thousands of dollars of expenditures. That's not in your expenditures, right?
No.
That's not, right. So that's repetitive. That means, because we didn't flood in Sandy, but every one of those residents went and got a rental van, drove it to the Rustic Mall, and spent thousands of dollars at no feasible study impact. So social impact is tremendous, and besides that, the impact on the downtown, the mall, the Rustic Mall, the people's life, the tax base, all that is not in your studies either, saying, oh man, the town is actually losing money downtown because of the flooding. If we fix the flooding or elevated or did a levee or whatever, it improves downtown, which raises the value. So this is where my point at the beginning is. Even from the point of 2006 to now, because of the flooding, the value of the town has gone down as a whole. So that's not in the study nowhere, and it's very hard to put your hands around that.
Yes.
But it should be in the study, because you're impacting taxes, you're not only in the town, but the county. You're impacting residents' life, social life, development, business impact, all these things. And none of that's part of the study. It's more black and white. And that's what I'm trying to say. If we're doing it based off a computer number, but if we go back and see what they're doing now in Manville, in the Valley, in the North Side, in Millstone, in Rocky Hill, in Hillsborough, this is the real cost. But there's got to be a way that we take repetitive impact loss to the residents of these areas. And that's the biggest piece I think we're missing. People are spending money over and over and over to live in these residences. The problem is, okay, many times, well, I didn't tell them to buy there, just tell them to leave. Yeah, who's going to buy the house? So they're stuck between a rock and a hard place here. Even if they want to do the FEMA elevation, they need $30,000 to match the FEMA money. So these people all have expenditures that we don't have in the cost, and also the loss along Main Street, Manville, due to flooding is enormous. So the tax base is going down. So the whole town just got reevaluated, so everything goes down. So somewhere in that calculation, it's not just a pure, how much does it cost to repair it, to, the value of it. There's got to be somewhere the tax impact and the basin-wide impact. And that's where I think listening to people talk over the last 2 years has come to us, you're missing the point. You're missing the point. And I'm just trying to say, I don't want to give up right now. And at the meeting I had with you a year ago, I said the same thing. And that's why you guys are good enough. You had 1-3. You went from 3A to 3D to 4. You improved. You went all kinds of ways. And Kevin was right. At the end of that meeting, I realized you could have thrown the whole town in there, and we're not going to make that one. Just because of the costs, the values of the homes, and the cost to replace them aren't going to match. So it was a no-win situation. So I'm saying there's got to be a way to look at this, say, wait a minute, we just looked at it too narrow. And that's my opinion. I'm not an expert. But just from watching what's happened over the last 3 years, there's things happening in Millstone now and in Hillsborough now that are making things like, wait a minute, this should work. Why didn't it work? So just with that,
I
okay?
just have two other quick questions. The BCR, properties that are in the BCR and the calculation, they can only serve in the BCR once?
That's correct.
Okay.
But when we do our damage analysis in terms of benefits, we would look at various level storms, kind of an aggregate. We would look at, say, the 1 year, the 2 year, the 10 year, the 25, and it would come up with kind of an average annual damage for that storm, and that would be aggregated in a model. So you're not looking at one storm event, because that property is subjected to the chances of various different floods that it could occur within the project life cycle and year, every year.
So you using an average of an opportunity of potential floods, or just using that one, that one property once in the VCR?
It's used multiple times. If it's in the 10-year floodplain, it gets hit 10 times in 100 years, and you add up those 10.
Okay.
And if it's in a 100-year floodplain, it gets hit once in 100 years, and you add that in once.
Okay,
Concept.
I got you. And the only other question was on the economics, the economics of the grant, not of the study, is, so there's $421,000 left in authorized funding, right?
Right.
Or actually real cash, not authorized funding, because you authorized.
Yeah, what's remaining in the
Yeah.
project.
So I don't know if you had mentioned, you said, oh, go back to the DEP, DEP would love to have it, but,
No, I mean, if it, once whatever's remaining
yeah.
after we complete the study, then DEP can authorize us to move the funds to another project. They can take it back.
But I thought the funds were 65% federal and 35% state.
We're in the feasibility study right now. Feasibility is 50/50.
50, yeah.
If
In
you-
construction, it's-
If you actually identify a recommended plan and you get construction authorization and funding, then that's cost shared, 65/35.
Okay. So is it fair to say at least 421, half of the 421 at least would go back to the state?
well, I mean, so let me see. Because, it's like we try and use it as best as we can.
By law, we have to be in cost share balance,
Yeah, so
50/50
right
for
now-
feasibility, so we have to determine how much would go back or be reprogrammed.
Right now, we have about $185K in Fed funds remaining. That's as of the 21st. And we have $235K in non-Fed funds remaining.
Okay. And now the couple things that Frank had mentioned to you that you're going to look at, you're going to spend some of that money.
Correct.
All right, okay.
Correct. And, to complete the study, complete the report, address public comment questions, address questions from North Atlantic Division. Yes, that we'll use additional funds. That's correct.
Real quick, Assemblyman Chicharelli, do you have a question? I know you have to go somewhere, so I want to try to get you on before you have to leave.
Thank you. First of all, Frank, thank you for your leadership and all the participating communities. Jack Chicharelli, Hillsborough resident and Assemblyman for the 16th, which includes a great many of the towns that are represented on the commission. I was wondering if you can explain how it is that the benefit cost ratio, how is a modest community not disadvantaged by this calculation? And by modest community, do I mean a community that's comprised of homes that are very modestly priced? Because it almost seems to me there should be sensitivity analysis that speaks to the number of lives affected by the flood, rather than have the benefit cost analysis be a function of the value of those homes. Is not a community that's comprised of many, many modest homes disadvantaged because of the fact the homes are very modest in value, as opposed to the number of lives affected?
Well, we typically look at things, you could put a dollar value to.
Because you spoke to reconstruction costs.
Right. It's not market value that.
That's right, it's not market value, it's
No.
reconstruction costs, but reconstruction costs are a function of market value. The lesser expensive the home, the lesser the reconstruction costs. But it seems to me that that approach to the calculation disadvantages a community comprised of very modest homes. Are we actually saying that if there were 10,000 homes and 20,000 lives affected by the kind of floods we see in Manville, they still would not exceed the 1%? Because they're very, very modestly priced homes.
Well, there's one thing. If you have modestly priced homes, you tend to have more of them because they're dense, so you could have a greater damage pool. But if this was, say, an affluent area, say a more affluent area, you might have...
You're not going to say what I think you're going to say, are you?
You might, no, I'm not. You might have a lesser number of homes that might be worth more, so there's a trade-off.
What I'm suggesting is that if you use reconstruction costs in a very, very modest community, it matters not how many lives are affected by the kind of floods we see in Manville. And that, to me, is a real limitation of the benefit-cost ratio. Now, I don't know if you guys are the ones that came up with that ratio, or if that's just the regulations and the laws and you're bound by them. But I'm asking us all to do a sensitivity analysis here. What we're basically saying is that if 30,000 lives, if 20,000 homes were affected by the kind of floods we see in Manville, we still might be below the 0.1 because this is a very, very modest community, as opposed to 10,000 $1 million homes. In actuality, what we're kind of saying is that 5,000 $2 million homes has a better chance of getting aid based on that calculation than a community of 10,000 homes that are all priced at 100,000. Listen, I'm not here to pick a fight with you guys. This is a magnificent study you've done. It's very comprehensive, and you've been gentlemen and real competent in communicating. But it seems to me there's a real flaw in the calculation in that respect. There should be, in addition to the mathematical calculation, a sensitivity analysis that speaks to the number of lives affected so that we don't end up disadvantaging a community that has, sorry to be so repetitive, very modestly priced homes.
Okay, three things that I think of immediately is, number one, $200,000, $300,000 homes. Just from working around the area, Long Island, Westchester, that's kind of a typical price of what we're running into on homes near a river. It's not like this community is more modest than other communities that are getting similar. They seem to be running in about that range.
What if 30,000 lives were affected with each type of flood we see in Manville and the ratio still was coming in less than 1?
Well, there's another thing that they are working about, because the BC ratio is not something, we came up with at the
Right.
New York district. Economic justice has been something that they're bouncing around a lot now, that they're trying to kind of capture that.
Who's they?
Our Washington level, certainly our environmental and cultural people
Okay.
are wrestling with that. So that's something they're trying to get a handle on. And then the other thing, I think what Alex was saying, and maybe you missed it, or maybe I missed generally a more expensive home takes up more property. So you may have one home on an acre, just to give an example, and then in a modest community, you may have 20 homes on an acre.
If there was one home in Manville and it was priced at $250 million, they'd be over the 0.1.
And we're also talking
And
about
therefore, we get the funding?
repair costs. And the repair costs aren't quite as sensitive to the value of the house.
Yeah.
Well, if you build
There are a couple of things that it's not as bad as I think you may be picturing it.
Well, if you build a ranch in Manville, it's not going to cost, and I disagree with you. If you drive through Hillsborough and Franklin, they now put mega mansions on the same size lot that's in Manville. But they're not worth $150,000. They're worth, I live in one section of Manville,
Frank,
my house.
I just want to make a point. I'm sorry to interrupt, because it seems to me there should be a sensitivity analysis that gets away from value and gets to lives affected, the number of lives affected. Because I got to tell you something. Because Manville is such a modest community, it almost seems to me, as the point that you all made, it matters not if you include every single structure in Manville, you'll still come out on the wrong side of that calculation. And to me, it should be, and that's where there should be a sensitivity analysis, in addition to this exercise, that speaks to lives affected. Numbers don't always tell the whole story.
I think that's something we should be bringing up to our federal legislators,
Yes.
the ones that
we
write these rules.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to reach out to our representatives and
Yeah.
make this very clear point that basically, and I thank Kevin for bringing it up, basically, you're right. Put the whole town of Manville in here, we're not going to make your code. We're not going to make the number. So there's nothing that will save these people from flooding.
Yet, I know we all believe, based on the number of lives that are affected with each flood, we should qualify.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And I like your idea as well, as not increasing the scope of the project, but certainly increasing the size of the basin to increase that number, to see if we can at least get closer.
Absolutely.
So that any other type of sensitivity analysis carries the day. I'm sorry I have to run. Thank you all. Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you
You're
for
welcome,
coming.
sir.
Appreciate
We'll be in
it.
touch.
Okay, thank you. I know we have another representative. Did you want to say anything or speak? You're good? Okay, I know you came in, you're new to this. Don't worry, we'll catch you up real quick. And did the representative from Bonnie Watson Coleman?
So, hi everybody, my name is Patrick Gaskin, I'm here on behalf of the Congresswoman Madam Coleman. She did send a letter, and we're just here to listen, to go, the study that you've done, and of course your concern. And I have heard, I totally understand where you're coming from, I believe. And in the sense that cost analysis and cost of repair is going to hit someone who lives in a modest house a lot more than someone who lives in a house.
Right.
I definitely understand, and I definitely will be on.
Yeah, we would love to have a meeting with her and bring that point up, that we think that calculation, very clear, that the number of lower to moderate homes impacted will have a very hard time meeting the federal standard. Okay, anybody else? Okay.
Steve has to.
Oh, Steve, sorry.
Frank, a couple things. First of all, in your laundry list of all the costs that are being borne, the one you didn't mention is flood insurance. Flood insurance is unbelievable on an annual basis. And that would be a saving that would be ongoing forever, guaranteed.
Right, but that's, again, we follow certain rules and regulations to put the BC ratio together, as Alec explained. So I know, I understand that, but it's not, that wouldn't be part of our calculation, but that, yes, flood insurance is a great expense
The other
in an area
question
that
I have is, I truly don't understand the BCR. You said that you're saving, you're estimating a saving with a 100-year event of $2.5 million a year, something like that?
0.85, I think, was the baseline, Alec?
2.85 was the annualized damage pool that we came up with based on depreciated structure
Does
costs.
that mean over 100 years, you'd save 100 times that?
I don't believe so, no.
Why not, if it's annualized?
What we do, we have a program called HEC FDA, or flood damage analysis. We receive, from our economics section receives from engineering, water surface elevation levels for a number of various storm events. The HEC FDA program incorporates those water surface elevation levels from the various different level storm events, combined with the structure inventory and depreciated structure costs, and it comes up with that annualized damage pool based on an aggregate.
Or for your 2% event, it was like $1.5 million, right, a year? Why wouldn't that be, for 50 years, why wouldn't that be $75 million, should we say?
It looks at the chance per year, as well as the severity.
Annualized means annualized, as far as I can see.
Yeah.
There's also the value of money in the future versus value of money now. So when does that, but yeah, roughly 100 years times the annual cost. If you adjusted it for interest and the value of money future and now, that's the right concept.
Okay, so if that's the right concept, and it costs, say, $100,000 to elevate a house, times 300, that's only $30 million. You mean you guys can't cross that bridge? I don't understand how you get your numbers. If you're going to save an annualized cost of $75 million, and you bring it back, it's not going to be $30 million. It's certainly not going to be $15 million, which is what your ratios say.
No, it's more like how much would the levy cost? If the levy's going to cost $75 million today.
No, I forget all your structural solutions. I
Okay.
understand that they're crazy. But I don't understand why raising these houses up isn't a cost savings to the government. Why that doesn't pay. Because it's not that much money compared to all these other things you're talking about.
That's why I asked about the FEMA, because FEMA basically says it's $90,000 to elevate a home.
Yeah, and they're experiencing even less, right?
Right, exactly, right.
But
So,
I used a number like $100,000 just
Right.
for argument's purposes, because I can think about that in my head, but I can't.
So, just another one of those.
We have recently updated the non-structural costs, having worked with the Corps for a while. Non-structural plans generally were falling out years ago. But now with like Irene and Sandy, even Katrina, it's become a lot more economical to do the non-structural measures. It's more people doing it, it's more common, and the price has dropped, and we've picked that up.
The nice thing
I
is.
don't know if it's
Right.
exactly nailed exactly here, I don't know.
And the nice thing is, most of the homes that needed to be removed are being handled now, 108 of them. So most of the ones that are left can be handled elevation-wise.
And those would all be in the flood fringe. They wouldn't be in a floodway, so they wouldn't be damaged in flooding situation.
Right, well,
after
there's a
they've
lot
been
less,
raised.
there's a lot less benefit from something in the fringe. You know, you want to protect that person that's flooded every 10 years. You know, because you count that one 10 times. You know, a guy out in the fringe that only gets flooded 1 foot every 100 years is not getting a lot of benefits.
Well,
And that's where you may be also getting a little.
Yeah, but I just don't understand. An annualized cost is an annualized cost. It just is. It takes
Well,
all those things into consideration.
these are all good questions, and
We can get you a written answer on that.
okay.
I'm a hydraulics guy, I'm not the
I'm
economist.
an architect. I'm not
So-
an economy either.
So we do have a guy with a doctorate in this, and he can give you a really good answer.
Okay,
Okay?
Well,
okay.
where does the number then from, like, what number did you start with then for this number that you plugged into this program to get your annualized cost? Because the table that you showed before was only up to 1999. And since then, there was another category Floyd. There
Another.
was the nor'easter in 2007. There was another flood in 2011, all of which caused severe damages. But it's like, where is all that coming from? Because suddenly we had frequency.
Yeah, we've had four
Yeah, four major
400-year
events
storms in the last
That's my question.
dozen years. You know?
Right.
So you're speaking to the screening of the basin, not the development of our cost. You're talking
No, how
about the
does-
national flood
How do you
insurance?
establish that the number for that 2.85 million that you had for the annualized flood cost? That number, how did you, like, you plug it into a program, but where are you getting the basis from that?
It's based on, we do a hydraulic analysis, and we say, I don't remember, I don't know offhand, but well, let's just say Irene was a 100-year storm here. And we calibrate to Irene, and we do our analysis, say, that was a 100-year storm. Then we say, okay, how high would the 50-year storm be? And we do our hydraulics and all our stuff, and we get an elevation for a 50 and a 500, and then that goes into the program, and then they say, okay, over a 50-year project life, you know, how much damages would these array of storms caused? And so it's not like we took the numbers out there and then tried to annualize the actual damages. That was more like a check. Like, okay, Irene caused this much damages, is that still what we're getting in our model? Like, okay, you know, when I run the Irene storm and I get water surface elevations and I give it to the economics people and they get their damages, they should be close.
Okay.
But it's not
So-
like we say, okay, we had Irene and we had Floyd, but we missed the last 3 storms. No, it's all done in a,
So this is like a probability environment?
Yes,
It's not based on
absolutely,
any
right.
actual costs and what the weather patterns are doing and everything
It's all
like that?
computer, that's what I was saying.
Yeah. Okay.
you know, and on the Passaic, for instance, that job sat dormant for 30 years. You know, and then we came back with 30 years more records, 30 more annual storms, and what we thought was 100 ended up coming out to be a 60.
But I mean, likewise, in this study, we had the 12 years, and boom, 2 more major floods, 1 more
I mean,
semi-major.
knock on wood, we've had 5 years without it.
Yeah,
But
but
the statistics.
we know that,
Yeah.
you know, everybody braces for it, and then there's the whole idea of what just the homeowners go through mentally
Yeah.
with
Now,
it.
now, your study doesn't say it's not going to flood. Actually, your study says probability, it is going to flood.
Yes.
So we're telling the people, by the way, we're not saying you're not going to flood. We're saying you're going to flood, probability. But we're just not going to be able to help you.
Sadly, yes.
Yes, unfortunately, that's correct.
We've got our laws that we have to abide by, and
Okay.
Have one more
Okay, go,
question,
Kevin.
because I think you need to turn it to public, so, I know you had said, I don't know if that was just.
Kevin, can you speak up?
I'm sorry, I don't know if you just mentioned semantics, Alex, when you were speaking, but you said typically, you know, if it didn't meet the BCR, you would not recommend any further action.
We can't by our regulations.
Okay, so, that's fine. So here's my question, and you may not even know the answer. Is there any study nationally that did not meet the BCR for any alternative that actually moves forward, that you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of. In that case, if there was a project with the Corps, a study with the Corps, they couldn't identify an alternative, and we had a negative recommendation, maybe there was a case where local interests contacted their congressman to write it into law that this
Where are
would
they?
be directed. I believe there was one study, Jackson Brook in Morris County, where we were directed to study it after doing a recon level, but it wasn't written into law for construction.
My question.
I don't know.
Okay. Is
I'm not
about
putting you on the
the
spot.
practicality is, say we massage these numbers and get to a 1.01. What are the chances of actually getting funding at that point when we're competing nationally for
Yeah.
funds?
I think, you submit that as a comment. I'm not sure if they're looking at BC ratios of 1.5 and above for, because you have to compete with other projects nationally. And I believe the cutoff is 1.5. If you have a project that's 1.5 and above, then you stand more of a chance of receiving funds, whereas if you're lower than that,
So we could basically add Rocky Hill, Millstone, and everybody into this, and we're still not going to get 1.5 then. You're saying
Well,
1.
yeah, what I'm saying is it's an approved project, 1 or above,
Right.
but the chances of receiving funds, it might actually be higher, I'm not sure. That's why I submit that as a comment.
Right. So-
But yes, there is a cutoff point. I think it's 1.5, it might be a little higher, as far as obtaining funds, and being up there competitively.
So it could hit
Or you have to wait, they put you in a queue and,
Queue have to wait.
it could be several years.
And then it comes basically, meet your representative, whoever
Right.
sticky wheels are going to get it moving.
Correct.
Right.
Although the appropriations is just the one piece of it, it would also have to be authorized.
Right. All right, anybody else on the? All right, can I have a motion to open it to public portion?
Motion.
Someone will have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Please come to the mic. Please speak in the mic, give your name and address.
Bob Kaminsky, 10 Liberty Street, Lost Valley, Manville. Apparently, your study has a few holes in it, gentlemen. I did project management study for multi-million-dollar programs before I retired for AT&T. And the one thing I learned, if I thought I had everything, I'd look again. These folks just pointed out a couple of gray areas that you didn't touch on. I'm going to go in a different direction. I believe your evaluation or damages are way off and minimal, to say the least. Because you're only looking at FEMA costs. You didn't look at total reimbursement, rebuild by the other people. My case is one. I didn't have flood insurance. I wasn't required to have flood insurance. Floyd was a $75,000 rebuild from my insurance company. That's part of savings. Maybe not the FEMA at the time, but it's still part of savings. Forget the heartache and headache. The people who had FEMA insurance that you calculated the cost on, you didn't put down their costs for their car, personal items, goods, having to go someplace else to live, and all these other factors that FEMA didn't cover. I think your $20 million can easily be a $35 million, easily, if you bring in all the factors. Furthermore, you didn't take in the costs of National Guard deployment, police overtime, OEM, fire, the VFW, what they put, and all the other rescue agencies. Those are all cost savings if there was no flood. The other cost factors, before Floyd, I was a $450,000 house, one of the biggest in the valley, probably Manville. 5-bedroom, 3-bath, 100 by 300 lot. I've had a sign out for 2 years saying $250. I had one guy offer me $190. And I actually gave that thought. Okay? That's what the storms have done. Part of what was done, you say, well, we got to get the water downstream quicker. That would help our folks upstream. Rutgers study, which did a big study and started the idea of taking down these weirs, basically saying anything that impacts the river, raising the water level, impacts quicker and longer flooding. So why the hell aren't you looking at the biggest weir in the valley, the Island Farm Weir?
We
Let
actually,
me continue, okay? You did do a study, okay? And I was there for that study. And since that meeting, I didn't return because it's more like an Army Corps of idiots, okay? You had two rivers with two weirs. When the Raritan would flood, usually ahead of time, the Millstone Weir would act like a breakwall for several hours. At that point, the Raritan River usually was on its way down. Then the Millstone River would flood, and the Raritan River Weir would act like a breakwall. You have now put both those weirs underwater 2.5 to 3 feet. I have a water level at my house under normal conditions that is 2 feet higher than before the weir. That means I have 2 less feet of water before my house gets hit. Water on top of my property that flows in my basement windows only sticks around for 1.5 to 2 hours and only gets 2 feet high. 1.5 to 2 hours. It takes the river 3 to 4 hours to come up 2 feet. Simple math. I would have never got hit if the Island Farm Weir wasn't there. You did a study that said the Island Farm Weir has no significant impact under high water conditions. Of course, it's already underwater. Anything that makes that water flow is going to stop flooding upstream. You put in a dam, you raise the flood basin, and you raise it quicker. Okay? To buy out the valley would save a lot of money. All right? To buy out the entire valley is crazy. How many more times are you going to pay? My last flood was covered under FEMA because I did a remortgage. They said, oh, you need flood insurance, which, by the way, is $3,200 a year. So I consider that like taxes. I have to pay it. So living in Manville or any place, retired, I'm now paying $11,000 a year before I buy my first can of Alpo. All right? And I just got to notice my flood insurance going up. Guess what? I'll probably have to go to kennel ration. The Island Farm Weir has done significant damage. We were promised by you guys, the Army Corps of Engineers, a floodgate in Bow Brook when you did your presentation. You did not put in a floodgate. You put in an 8-inch bypass. And no one can answer me that question yet. No one. Oh, and by the way, putting in that Island Farm Weir raised the water tables so much, it pushed up creosote. So see, there's a huge effect, not just one thing, all right? Buy out the entire valley, may lose income and taxes to the county, to the town, to the state. But your compared savings is the cost of what it takes to rebuild these modest homes time after time after time after time. You reduce your school budget because you're going to have less kids going. You're going to reduce various departments. You're going to reduce maintenance. You're going to reduce trash leaves and item pickups. They all go in the same bucket. If you have expenses and you lose money, you're reducing your expenses. Then you make the land public land like Duke's, and you could find out you're ahead of the game. Got one more point. And excuse me for this. I moved here in '73. I raised 2 kids. I made my 5-room ranch into a 5-bedroom house. Frank knows me. People from Manville know me. I have volunteered every single year of my life in Manville, except when I was project manager at AT&T and I traveled so much. I have retired. I am back on the fire department. Every single year. I've been the model citizen. Never been in front of a judge for a complaint. None of my kids have. One's a cop, the other just got out of the military. I raised my family good. My point is, that's your sensitivity. I can't walk away from my house because I did the right thing. I paid off my mortgage, so when I retired, it was a nest egg. Forgotten and unprotected by the Constitution. We're guaranteed protection. We don't have that. I don't care about your existing laws. The Constitution says we are protected. Here I sit, sleepless and weary, waiting on the next storm's watery fury. Will it flood or just rain? I don't know if I can stand any more to strain. I used to take it like a man, but now many times in old age, I need a hand. My retirement savings gone, my home is shot. I believe the government has forgot. I can't take another storm, or is this to be my old age norm? Maybe I'll have a stroke one day down in my basement watching the water come in. As we chop away the debris with axes, I began to ask, why the hell am I paying taxes? Where's the help that outside countries get on a moment's notice? Yet we all sit here and relent. Yes, we've forgotten we are, so prove me wrong. Help us get the hell out of town.
Robert, Rob, can you just send us the study from the levy and where that you had presented to us, about 2 years ago, was it?
Yes.
And give it, that way we'll bring it at the next meeting, and then we'll go over it and see where it falls. And we have an engineering committee. We'll bring it up with the engineering committee and let them look at it. Thank you. Next.
Hi, Olga Zaharko, 1324 Gress Street in Manville. I believe some of you gentlemen were here in '99 when we first had our meeting after Floyd, and here we are again. And we have a year of El Nino coming. No, I'm sorry, La Nina. This is a problem. I thought by now that we would have moved out of Manville, but we kind of trusted what you guys told us after, after Floyd, that we will do what we need to do to make it safe, and so we never left. Now we can't. I just hope you can seriously help us.
Thank you. Next. Anything else? Rich?
Maritza Stern, 311 Pope Street, Manville. Well, my thoughts are not as organized as all these people. I didn't have too much time to prepare. Just found out about the meeting a couple of days ago. 18 people in the audience versus this panel here. I believe you didn't advertise enough because there's a lot of hot-blooded tempers out there who would love to be here. Okay, so I don't know if that was done purposely. I took some notes on some things I read on the report here. Some things were not explained properly. It's like a teacher explaining to a student, and the student, it's the first time hearing it, but to you, it's common sense. So I think a lot of things went over our heads. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong. Okay. This woman, I'm sorry, what's your name? Allison made a comment, which I had here, about you didn't include on your statistics on the chart on page 13 the storms of 2007 and 2011, which had a great impact and cost, especially after the homes in 2005, the values went up proportionately. So I don't see any statistics involved in that calculation, and I think that's why you brought that up as well, and that's in my head with the benefit cost valuation. So is there a reason, since we're here finalizing a report in 2016, why those statistics were not included? Because numbers are numbers, and if you're talking about numbers, then let's talk numbers.
When we come up with our damages, we don't actually look at actual events. We do that in terms of engineering calibrations. Ray, did you want to say something about that?
Well, 2007 and 2011 were included in our hydraulic analysis, so we know how high they got. I
Well, they're not
don't know if
included on
they,
the statistics for us to read. So we're assuming they're not included in your statistics. I'm not a statistician, but I do understand math to the best of my knowledge. And if I don't see that the time frame, it reaches up to 1999, where are the other numbers that belong in your calculations from 2007 and 2011 storms? Are they not included? Because there is a mention of them on page, I believe, 20 or 21. 20 makes a mention of the storms, but it doesn't include the monetary value of loss on the statistics on page 13, because in parentheses, it goes up to 1999.
Yeah.
While I didn't read the whole entire 321-page report, that's the chart that you placed up there for the residents to look at.
The costs on the chart you're referring to, those were national flood insurance claims. We just used that as a screening of the basin.
I understand that, but why didn't you include 2007 and 2011 into your calculation?
I see what you're saying.
The report is, you're completing your report in the year 2016.
Okay.
But yet those amounts were omitted, but yet they were mentioned in the report.
I think that would be a good comment. Maybe we could look up figures for those and provide them.
Okay, because that might change the
agree.
ratio of your
Yeah.
.2 and make it a little higher.
Good point.
That-
Some of the worst storms have hit after 19.
Absolutely. And with the price of gas going up, and you have supply and demand, and price of gas, so to rebuild a home, and that has to be calculated also. So if you're including 2007, 2011 storms, the price of gas went up, and you have that, those numbers have to be included. Shipping costs will be higher, differences in amounts, pretty much.
All right, I understand what you're saying, that there's some costs, that we typically don't look at. We don't look at particular storms directly and include that as benefits or damages. It comes from a pool and a chance of a storm happening per year. We don't look at past flood damages and calculate that as the damage pool. We would look at floodplains and the chances of them happening and what damages would result from that. Ray, you may want to say something.
right, and just looking at FEMA claims from 2011 does not capture all the damages. So what we do is we get a structural inventory of the whole area, and then we replicate what we think 2011 was, and we annualize it. And we get the damages based on how many houses were flooded, at what elevation, and it involves a lot of other costs. So if we just went with the 2011 numbers, we would be grossly underestimating
No, I didn't say
damages.
just go with the 2011, all inclusive, inclusive. If you're looking at 1999, the property values were different, the amount of damage is different because now there might be more increase in flooding due to developments all around. Hillsborough right now is developing immensely. That's going to affect us. We all know it. We're scared. Okay, we're very concerned about that. We don't know who controls all these decisions of rebuilding, the building in Boundbrook. That's an immense structure there. Okay, they're protected. We're not. Okay, so what I'm saying is, in the calculations you've made, it only went up to 1999. So there are more.
No.
That's what it
No.
seems like to us. Am I wrong? I don't know. That's what it seems like.
Well, first off, they don't even don't use real storms. They use calculations of prospective storms and impact. So in the calculation, they did use 2007, 2008, 11, but they didn't really use those storms. They used it as probability. So it may sound insane that instead of using the storm and impact, they're using probability numbers from the storm and impact.
Well, the probability of there being a storm once every 100 years, that's out the window, because of course we all know it happens more often. So just like your, laws of the cost ratios, the benefit to cost ratio, there are other aspects that should go into those calculations. We all know it's not once every 100 years, because I've been in Manville for 10 years, and 2007 and 2011, that's 2, and we almost got hit with Sandy. That would have been 3 in 10 years. So the calculations on statistics, there has to be some other way to make.
We are aware of that. I mean,
Okay.
obviously, we know that.
Okay.
You could get hit with a 99-year storm today and a 100-year storm next year.
Right, but to bring it up constantly once every 100 years,
But this 1977 to 1999 that was on there,
Yeah.
that was just for screening.
Okay.
Like, okay, let's look at the whole basin, let's take a look at some of the damage claims, which we know are low, and see what areas got hit. And then we say, okay, these areas got hit really hard, and these areas did not get hit really hard. So let's zero in on the area here that got hit really hard. And then we develop real numbers, if you will, real hypothetical numbers. But, so we're not using the FEMA numbers. We know if someone doesn't file a FEMA claim, it wouldn't be included in our numbers. That wouldn't make sense. So we know that we can't just say, okay, the FEMA claims were this much, and that's how much the people got damaged. No, we go much deeper than that.
And like, for instance, we should have this man on the panel on the Army Corps of Engineers, okay? He's been impacted, it's emotional. And forgive me if I say this, but you're like the calmest group of organized men here, because it doesn't feel like you have one bit of your soul, like, involved in this. Like, you can't feel what we feel. And I felt everything he said, I felt it in here. I've only been a resident 10 years. I wish I could get out. I can't, because the value of my house has dropped immensely. Okay, and when I get so insulted when people say on the internet, make stupid comments. Oh, well, they should know better. They moved there and they knew it was a flood town. Really? Well, I did my due diligence. I had my real estate. I said, I don't want to live in a flood zone. I had to go to the town because I was pregnant out to here, and she was helping me to make sure that my house was definitely not in a flood zone, that it had not been affected by any flood. And then I found out years later from neighbors that my house had been flooded before I bought it. And the person who sold me the house committed fraud, but of course now I passed statute of limitations, and if they don't have any money, I can't sue them. So now I'm stuck in Manville. I'm stuck. And I have 2 children who I'm trying to raise here, one with autoimmune disorders. I really don't want him growing up in Manville. I took him to the Lost Valley not knowing about all the disgusting mold that was flying in the air, and he got severely ill. Okay, these are things that affect us day in and day out. I don't take him to any parks in Manville because to me, it's still in the ground. Then, I just think, let me not even go there. I don't
But
want
the only thing about the commission, that is the Army Corps, and they're engineers, and
the prerequisite should have been to find men
commission, take my word for it.
men and women who are directly
Well, guess
impacted
what?
by floods.
Well, this commission does, and I can speak for myself. I've lived my whole life in Manville. I grew up in Lost Valley. I've seen that from the bottom up. And every time you talk, and every one of those, when she started crying, I don't even heard my voice crack. So, from knowing the commission, and for the last 4 years with these people, they care.
And it must kill you to see them sit there so calmly while inside you're burning and you just want to fly off your chair, because I know I do.
And then you can talk to these people. I'm very good at doing that, but
And what's taking so long to do some mathematical
but we're-
equations? What's taking years and years and years? This man's been living all his life there. What's taking so long? Maybe we need a new group of people who are so influenced by our emotions that they'll get things done.
Well, they have. I just want to say, over the last 4 years, you got to realize this started in 99, 2001, 2002. From 2002 to 2008, 9, not was a lot done. From 2010 to 15, they did a lot. And basically, it was because of this commission and our federal and state representatives. I hate to say, the squeaky wheel gets the action, and we got them to do it. Did the results come out the way we want it? No. But as you can tell by the commission, we haven't given up yet. And we're going to go to our state and federal representatives and keep fighting, because you want to know how you get things done in this country? You get your representatives, they get the funding, to tell the Army Corps, look at this again.
Absolutely.
Don't go spending another $6 million for a false report.
Absolutely.
Use the people and buy us out.
That's it.
Well, we don't expect that.
Well, this is like a Band-Aid solution. You know, you go to the doctor, he's like, take this medicine, you'll be fine. No, let's find the problem and let's fix the problem. Because this is the only way that this country should run. Manville is a patriotic, that's what, when I first moved to Manville, I didn't realize I just moved into patriotic America. And as you said, your son just came from the military, and there's so many people that volunteer in Manville, and there's such a giving town. When I first moved there from New York, it was a snowstorm, and I said, oh boy, we're not prepared. It's only 3 days since we moved in, and my children, I had an infant and a small child, and as a New Yorker, you don't expect anyone to help you, honestly. And what do I get? The best neighbors in the world. And that's the one thing keeping me in Manville, that I have the best people next to me who I don't want to call my neighbors, they're my friends, they're my family. And they came over and they brought out the snow blower, and they just went to, and I fell in love with Manville right there.
I just want to say, we have not given up.
It just seems like there should be more people in this audience, and not, advertising went out. Like I said,
We did send
we
advertising out.
need to, we need to get it out there.
Well, we'll have this is not our we meet every month, so,
Now, with the flood insurance, well, we could reduce the flood insurance over time in the future and perhaps start a fund. I don't know how they feel about that, but I'm willing to put more money into getting this project completed. It'll reduce the flood insurance, make a special fund. The fund will be for flood mitigation, but we need to have a date of completion and the total cost. And then it'll reduce the flood insurance. It's a trade-off, but the problem will be resolved. This could have been resolved so many years ago, because we need people to think outside the box. Really, lower the flood insurance, because we might not get flooded now, or we might get low flooding. So, and then you raise the cost somewhere else. Let's make a plan where it comes out of our pocket, but we'll live comfortably. We won't have to worry about the rain, because I'm sure we all suffer and we shiver, and the psychological benefits, you have no idea how much we fear rain. And I'll leave it with that. I have so much more I could say, but
All right,
I
thank
want to
you.
leave it open to someone else.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Next, Rich?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rich Onderco. I'm the current mayor of the borough of Manville. I'm very proud of that. I'm a former flood victim, 1971. I lived with my parents in a flood zone for 26 years, so I know exactly what these people are talking about. First, I'd like to thank the commission for all the work it's done over the years, the Army Corps for the study, and Mike D., the reporter here tonight, for running a nice article in Sunday's paper, bringing the spotlight to Manville. Because I truly believe Manville was the forgotten town. Okay. My duty as mayor and my call to civic duty resonates around a famous quote. And his picture's hanging on the wall, Dr. King. Life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you going to do for others? I believe we're all here tonight because we want to help. So, with that said, the question that I have in my mind over the last 55 years I lived in Manville is, where do we go from here? Do we just keep knocking down homes? Or are we going to have a plan to somehow lower flood waters throughout the basin? So my question to the Army Corps is this. I have a few here, so bear with me. My notes are scribbled. It was a Millstone River basin, and I want to know why it wasn't the entire Raritan River basin.
That was what was authorized, I believe, in 1999, was it? Yes.
Because it goes back to the commissioner's point of like having a wider area, okay? Hillsborough wasn't included, Somerville wasn't included. And those homes flood. So at one of your meetings, when you presented the flood wall and levee plan, it was severely flawed, okay? It stopped at 13th Avenue. So what would that mean? That would mean Hillsborough is now the forgotten town. because they would still flood. So I think the only viable option that makes the most sense to me anyway, living here my whole life and seeing the waters go higher and higher, is the channel modification plan, which you say the DEP would be against. I think that would have a widespread impact to lower floodwaters in both rivers if you did the channel modification and deepening. Now, my question is, you came up with a cost on that of over $130 million, I believe. Is that like the Pentagon hammer that cost $15,000? I mean, who's doing this work?
We have an engineering division with a cost branch, and they come up with costs for each of the plans. They do that based on quantities for each plan. You know, so many cubic yards of soil, the cost of getting construction equipment out, real estate costs, environmental mitigation costs. That's all figured in.
Because we all know Bound Brook has been protected. They started a lot earlier on in the process after 1971. They have a series of levees and flood walls that we watch get built and floodgates. I guess my question would be, would they even pass the cost-to-benefit ratios today that you used back in the 80s or 70s when you did that program? Because our town's no different.
Could you repeat the question, sir, please?
Would Bound Brook pass the cost-to-benefit ratios calculations that you're currently using today?
I would say if you said just the
Bound
town of
Brook has
Bound
the-
Brook,
Bound
if
Brook.
you just did the town of Bound Brook, the answer is no. Because you included Watchung and Greenbrook, which, this is what I'm saying, Rich. If you just did the town of Bound Brook, the whole town of Bound Brook, it would not pass, because they're very much like Manville. So if you went to Greenbrook, Watchung, you added all those, that added a lot more benefit, because they're basically very identical to Manville.
It's the opposite. Bob, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, the BC ratio, and it's for the whole project in
Right.
Greenbrook, is over 1. Okay, but quite a bit of the benefits are in the borough of Bound Brook.
So if they're identical to Manville, so how is Bound Brook qualifying, not Manville?
There's other factors beside the number and density of structures. There's the topography of the floodplain, how wide it is, how often it occurs, the cross-sections of the various rivers involved, how they overtop.
We're identical. We have 3 rivers, Royce Brook, 2 rivers, it's basically 2.5 square miles, 2.5 square miles. I mean, very good point. I assumed if we looked at Bound Brook today, just the town of Bound Brook, I'd like to see if they pass.
They would.
And the other areas, you know, we are actually evaluating the other areas. We call it incremental justification. We don't know right now, the study is underway, but a lot of us suspect that the other areas are not justified. That Bound Brook actually may indeed have been carrying parts of the other project. But that's just gut instinct, is looking at numbers, and, you know, it's an expensive study, and we're actually reevaluating the rest of the project.
My next question is, were any businesses or business losses taken into the economic analysis? We have a business owner here who was operating a profitable business out of Lost Valley. He lost everything. And half our Main Street, for those who don't know, goes underwater. So were any of that, was that taken into consideration?
We include damages to both residential and commercial structures, industrial structures, et cetera. That also includes contents to a certain degree of each structure. It's not just damage to the structure. But with regards to business losses, no, that's not taken into account.
I want to go back to the study for a second. It was a $6.8 million study that we spent over $3 million on. What was it spent on? Like, what was it, mainly salaries, or did you actually buy equipment? I mean, from a tax-paying standpoint, it seems like a lot of money to come up with this conclusion.
It's the various costs the salaries of people involved in the study. There's a lot of analysis that goes into it. In order to come up with the various measures and alternatives, a lot of analysis has to be done. In terms of economics, you have to do,
Surveys.
yes, in terms of economics, you have to do your structure inventory, the valuation, you have to do all the modeling of what the various alternatives, the optimization. In terms of engineering, there's design work involved, there's cost work involved,
Cost engineering.
various management. There's a lot of disciplines involved. Structural analysis to make sure, say, that levees don't fail. Geotechnical investigations, there's a lot involved. Environmental investigations. We have to meet, we have to, in our studies, we have to meet National Environmental Policy Act regulations, so we have to, not in this case, but we have to prepare an EA or an EIS, prepare all the documentation, go through the various processes. There is a lot of analysis.
To me, this is a man-made problem by overbuilding in our watershed. There's been too much impervious surface put into the Raritan Basin, and we feel the direct impact of that. So, it's a man-made problem. There should be a man-made solution, and I believe there could be a solution to actually lower water levels no matter what the cost, because it's a quality of life issue. It affects a wider area than just Manville. Now, Frank, the commissioner, you asked about where this commission's going. I guess the future is, if there's going to be no shovel in the ground in this area, then, I think the commission should focus on trying to help the community, because right now we have a CRS program going on in town, and I'm trying to resurrect that. People are complaining about their flood insurances, and I don't blame them. We have a 15% discount right now. We're trying to get to 20. We'd love to get to 25 by doing certain things that FEMA approves of. And we need help there in terms of education, contacts with FEMA, et cetera. Along those lines, too, we're going after more grants, non-disaster grants and planning grants, to try to help people with additional buyouts to get people out of harm's way. A rain barrel, rain garden program. I've been to seminars where they say, Rich, the biggest problem that causes flooding in this area is it's a single-family home. All the rain leaders go to the curb, okay? Urban sprawl has contributed to this problem greatly. And Frank, you see what's going on right now around Manville, okay? I don't have to tell you, it's not good. So, in closing, doing nothing is unacceptable. And if I may comment on the Weir situation, what value do you put on a human life? My friend drowned there, never found his body. There's got to be different technology available today, 20, 30 years later, because that Weir went in the early 90s, for the water company to source its water in another manner to actually put these rivers back to normal levels again. We could do little things like that. In addition, I got one more thing to share. I grew up on the north side, Johns Manville. They purposely moved the river. I don't know what year, I wasn't born. Probably in the late 1800s, early 1900s. They moved the river to suck water into their power plant for steam. Okay? A simple thing to do would be to straighten the river. Maybe it would save some homes on the north side. It's in a floodplain right there. I bring this to people's attention on numerous occasions, and nothing's done about it. Nothing. You want to keep this?
Sure.
You see the path.
Robert, I think I mentioned that to you about 2 years ago, about it's the Findern section. It's actually, and the river was diverted for Johns and Manville, right, went straight, and there's actually a little man-made dam on the bottom right corner that JM built. So, right, yeah.
2 weeks ago, my childhood home came down. I was off. I videoed it. It was emotional because I grew up there. the town has changed greatly in those areas that repeatedly flood. And I was just hoping that, that the Army Corps, along with the state DEP, would actually come up with some type of solution. I'm not saying it's going to be a silver bullet, because I know there is no silver bullet to this problem, but doing nothing is unacceptable, totally unacceptable. So I don't know where we go from here, but I hope I live long enough to see something done. Thank you.
Anybody else in the public like to speak?
Good evening. My name is Jim Waltman. I'm the Executive Director of the Stony Brook Millstone Watershed Association. I know it's getting late, so I'll try to make it brief. I just have some questions, and I really appreciate the comments from people in the audience. This has been a tough situation for decades, and what this commission's been doing to try to get answers is really commendable. So I'm just a little confused. You went over a little bit quickly about the project area. So as the commissioner said and the mayor said very well, the flooding in Manville is not a result of things happening in Manville. This is a watershed. This is an area we try to protect. That's our mission. We try to understand. There's 25 towns that drain in the Millstone Basin. So all the mistakes that we're all making in those other 24 towns have their end result here in Manville. So did you look at opportunities to increase the flood storage upstream from Manville? I mean, we look at the fortunate thing is there's a lot of open space along the floodplain of the Millstone River before the river gets to Manville. And we've done some much smaller scale projects in other parts of this basin where you have a stream that, because of stormwater runoff and increased volume, a stream will have its bed kind of carved down gradually. And if that continues, eventually that stream can't reach its floodplain anymore. So we've worked with some environmental consultants to try to level that all out and let the stream jump back into its floodplain, back into the natural flood storage that used to be provided with wetlands that are now dried out because it's not getting there. So that's something that you can do on a small scale. I don't know if that was in your analysis at a Millstone River Basin scale, which is, I realize, enormous. But looking at all the land that for example, the DNR Canal Park owns, I don't know to what degree there's opportunities there, or if that was even within the scope, to look at, the feasibility, the engineering, the hydrologic opportunities to let all that open space hold on some of these floodwaters longer and then kind of release it more gradually, so some of these people's homes might not suffer as much or as frequently. So I'll just...
Alec, you said that we did rule out the detention basins.
We did rule out detention
because you did look
basins.
at areas where
But when you set the what was it called, the project area, was that for both assessing the potential reduction in costs, or was it when you set that project area, did that also keep you from analyzing things that might help in Manville, but that you'd have to do, miles away from Manville?
We did not look at detention basins miles away. We looked at that in the area of Manville.
It was suggested about 2-3 years ago from the commission called speed bumps. Somebody came up and they called it speed bumps. So every so many miles up the river, you build a huge retention basin. Go up another basin, another basin. What it is, speed bumps was basically as the water came down, it got caught, slows it down, maintain it, spreads out like you said, gets going, gets the next one. But that was not part of this plan. It was suggested at a meeting, and it just never fell inside the plan because basically it would go all the way up to High Bridge and all the way down to Princeton to do it. So you'd be catching it as far north, well out of the 2.5 square mile project. But
Okay. Well, I think, that maybe that's something that some smart folks at Rutgers or Princeton or wherever could look into, the kind of further engineering analysis and hydrological analysis. And I'm not sure I'm talking about massive basins, but the question is whether there are opportunities just sitting right under our nose, if you could kind of get the river to use its floodplain more thoroughly than it currently does, because it can't get there because these banks. I mean, you look at these streams and rivers around here, the banks are just, they're like vertical. I mean, it's so different than what these streams used to look like, or we think they used to look like back in historical times. So the second question, I guess, and this has been said already, but unfortunately this problem seems to be getting worse and worse and worse, and it's in part because there's so much additional development, but in part the climate's changing. I recently saw a talk that a guy named Dr. David Robinson gave. He's the state climatologist. He's at Rutgers too. And he said the average precipitation in like the last, whatever it is, a decade and a half of this century is like 5 inches more than what it was on average last century. I mean, that's frightening. That's more than a 10% increase. So think of the billions of gallons of additional water that are coming out of the sky. So when you do an analysis like this, are you trying to, is it a dynamic assessment? Are you trying to project, if we did get more precipitation over time? Because that could affect the benefits too, I would think. If you're projecting more damage because the situation's getting worse, both through more precipitation and through more upstream development, then the analysis would probably come out differently, I would assume.
You might have noticed that we try and look at future conditions too.
Yeah.
And it is certainly a guess. I mean, without a doubt, we are guessing. If it comes to something like sea level rise, I'd say in the last 5-10 years, we've got some pretty definitive stuff that we can work on sea level rise. When it comes to climate change affecting rainfall, we're really still just in the embryo stages of it. We are considering it. We're looking at gauges. We're trying to find trends in gauges. It's also kind of hard to separate urbanization versus climate change.
Sure.
So we see, okay, the flow in the river may be increasing on a slow trend, but is that from development or is that from climate change? So we're trying to grab it, but we don't have a good handle on that. But we do project into the future. All our analyses are, what are the damages now? What are the damages 50 years into the future? And we annualize those damages over the entire project life. So we do look into the future. We try and get a handle on it. I can't tell you that we've got it right. No way. We're guessing. But we're trying.
Okay. Thank you. Well, I certainly look forward to looking at this study, but
To be honest, you're more than invited to come to our meetings, get involved in our meetings when we have discussed, when we have discussed at Rutgers.
Right.
But you're more than welcome to join us.
Well, I can understand the frustration, and folks here have been living this a lot longer than I have. I have not been to many of your meetings, but when I went back and looked online and I found the original authorization for this study back after Floyd, I think it was called the Ecosystem Restoration and Flood Control Study, and from that you would think, boy, they were going to look big picture and look at trying to restore floodplains and do a lot of pretty innovative things, and and maybe it was just because you never got the money that you thought you needed, but it didn't seem like you ended up anywhere near kind of living up to that.
Thank you.
Initial title.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Anybody?
Is everyone aware of the Blue Acres program with the DEP? Okay. What about HGMP? Was there eligibility from Monmouth County or Somerset County?
Yeah.
I know Monmouth and Ocean, they allowed that for Sandy, but probably not for post-Sandy.
Yeah.
I'm on the construction side of the house at DEP. We're saddled with problems with land use. Channelization is taboo with them anymore. Years ago, you could do that. Years ago, you can straighten out or put a horseshoe in the river without a permit. Now, to straighten it out, you probably need an act of Congress. We're fighting the same fight even within DEP. So So, I mean, channelization would have been a good option, but I know land use right now, they don't want riprap in the stream, they don't want channel, and even though it's gonna save life and limb.
You take down the Island Farm River, you'll get your channelization just from flow. You've admitted that, taking down the other weirs. You'll wash the debt out.
They
Guess
took,
what?
what was
Now
that,
our
Robbins
company-
Ave or West, the one right there in Raritan, they took out?
Raritan, they did a couple, and I think they're gonna do Millstone now. They're gonna start on Millstone.
Are you referring to the Calco Dam?
That was a remote.
Right at the confluence.
Recent one built, the one that Rutgers said is the most devastating man-made structure in the entire Millstone, Rare River Basin. Nancy, the director.
All right, anybody else in the audience? If not, can I have a motion to close the public portion? Franklin, I need a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. All right, first off, I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. It was a beautiful day outside, and you had to interrupt your life, and everybody is very busy to come here and listen to this. We have the notes, it's going to be on TV, so whoever could not make the meeting, we'll put it out there so we can actually share it. And if you have any questions, you can email on our Facebook account or our webpage. You can get email to us. Any question you have for the Army Corps, and we'll direct it to them. Second, I want to thank the Army Corps and DEP. It would have been a year ago when you told us this was your inkling, this is going to be the results. At that meeting, I got a little more emotional than at this one. And so you guys knew coming to this meeting, it was going to be an emotional meeting. Because anytime you spend $6 million of taxpayer dollars just to say no, it's very difficult. And to say that no, and at the same time tell the residents, oh, by the way, you are going to flood. But there's nothing we can do because our rules say you've got to be this number. And you're just not that number. But I thank you because you have been very courtesy and very polite and very upfront with us, what you could and could not do through this whole process. So I thank you for that. The only thing I want to tell you is, I told you at the last meeting, I was at the Freeholders, I go, I ain't giving up. I told you then, I'll tell you now, I'm not giving up. I mean, you have $400,000. There's an answer out there. I may have to go to my congressman, I may have to go to my senator, but there's an answer out there. I think Rich said it. This is a problem because of development in our county and in our state and how things happen. There's got to be an answer. And there's got to be a way that just because 1 and 1 is 2, but we need 3, that we can't help people. If there's 30,000 people being influenced by this flooding, there's got to be a way that we can help them. Do I know the answer? No. And do I have the money for this flood commission? Definitely not. But I do believe this flood commission has the heart and will to keep working on this. Because there has been people, and even our own county government says, you know what? The Army Corps said it can't be done. Maybe you guys should just walk away from it. We're not going to walk away from this. We're going to keep trying. We're going to think out of the box. We're going to use all your knowledge and skill. But not only for the Army Corps, not only DEP, also FEMA, also any other organization the county, state, or federal government has to figure this problem out. Because it's not going away. We know it's going to flood, and we know these people sit there and worry about it. So we're going to work with you. It may sound like sometimes we're mad at you, but we're just frustrated. We want to work with you. And together we'll get an answer. And I'm glad the representatives were here. We will work with our representatives to try to figure out ways to maybe find a proper way to resolve this. Because without the money, it ain't going to happen. And you made it very clear. Follow the money line. So I just want to thank you all, dear gentlemen, for coming tonight. And you were very professional, and I appreciate it. With that, I'd like to remind anybody who's here, there's a little survey. We have 8 little topics. Rich mentioned one. A lot of you guys mentioned ideas that where we should go. They're on here. And if you have any other idea that we should be looking at, please bring it up, because that's our goal this year, to realign ourselves to focus on the residents. to be a resource for the towns. Not only Manville, for every town on the commission, we want to be a resource. And one of them is actually insurance, CRS, the FEMA CRS program. How can we be a resource for the towns, which will lower your insurance? So we're here to help you. That's what we're here for. We do little projects. We have people cleaning rivers. We have people out practicing resources. We are here to try to find ways to help the residents and the towns to find ways to prevent flooding. Not stop flooding. You can't stop it, but have a proactive way to prevent it. Rain barrels, rain gardens. Kevin has a great way in Somerville. But also be here to make sure, if and when it happens flood, that we have the knowledge and information, we can help you and give you the information. So any information you have, please reach out to us. And I thank the Courier News for that article, because we got more information from that article getting out, and more people reaching out to us. And I thank you very much. Anybody else for the good of the commission? Anything else, Army Corps? All right, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Somerville, can I have a second? All in favor? Thank you. 9:31.